I love you, Heartworm.
Oh my gosh, man. Anyway, welcome to another episode of AutisHim, Black Files and Autism. I am one of the co-hosts, Ty. We got Lonnie, Nick, Trav in the building. Hey, guys, hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you do that. Make sure you hit that share button as well. We got a special guest for you guys. I'm very excited for this interview. This has been a long time coming. Really appreciate him being there and taking the time. We know he's a busy man. So on the call today, we have Dr. Barry. Dr. Barry is a doctor of internal medicine physician. He's a best-selling author. He's a podcaster. He's a speaker. You can catch some of his content on drbarrypierre.com. You can also catch on him on his YouTube channel at Dr. Barry Pierre on YouTube. You can catch some of his series on there, which is very, very awesome. I recommend you guys go check out Medicine Mondays. Also, go check out that Lunch and Learn as well. We're going to let him talk about all the things that he does because that's a long list. And we ain't got that kind of time, but we want him to talk about it because he's going to give you the real. I want everybody to give it up. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Barry. Give it up for him, everybody.
I got to sit back and be humble. I'm like, oh, you know what? Your boy really do be working. And I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. But again, I told Nick, I said, Nick, like, I am the humble guest coming onto the show trying to figure out how can I fit in here. Because I'm probably as excited as my four hosts here who are ready to get on it. I'm ready.
Well, Dr. Barry, we appreciate you being here again, man. And I just kind of want to jump into it. And I'm going to start from this angle because yes, you definitely have a following and you have a lot to say. Your YouTube channel, your content is very, very important. But I want to start from the beginning. I want you to start from the beginning, from the grind. You know, I want you to talk about your experience as not only being just a Black father with, you know, children, but being a Black father with, you know, children on the spectrum. I want you to also talk about just how you got started in your journey, and then we're going to get into the rest. But how did you get started with all this content, all this knowledge, all the things that you're doing in the community?
You know, it's interesting. I was a going on second year, third year medical student, and I'm Haitian, so a lot of the people in my community, we would all grow up going to this one doctor in the community, call him Dr. Gaston. Like, he was the community doctor, and I told myself, hey, when this is all said and done, I want to be like Dr. Gaston. But I had to establish myself because, again, I'm still a student. I don't really know much. But I told myself, all right, if I start putting myself out there early, like by the time I go out, because, you know, I got crazy ambitions. By the time I go out and, you know, I finish medical school, finish residency, people will know who I am. So I actually started blogging at first, right? I read some of them old blogs the other day. I don't know what I was talking about, but it was the E for effort. Right? The E for effort, just blogging about my day, blogging about medicine, blogging about health and, you know, how to take care of yourself as little as I did. And that really got the bug going to get onto social media just in general. Because at the time, social blogging was the thing. There was no, you know, going live. There was none of that. Right? It was one of those, like, how could you get yourself out there? So I was doing my blogging, and I remember having to sit in the office at the school every beginning of the year. Because they're kind of terrified because they're like, hey, Barry, please don't say nothing that'll get me and you and the school in trouble, right? Like that was a meeting I had to have every beginning of the year. Please don't say nothing crazy on there. And that really started the bug because not only, and mind you, especially when you're doing that little thing there, you don't really know who's following, who's reading. But then when I started talking about, just kind of different medical stuff, and I would have other classmates and even teachers say, "Hey, I read your blog," and I'm like, "Oh, you read my blog? Oh." So now, again, so now I'm starting to straighten up my shoulders, walking around the school like, "Oh, I might know a little something." And then when I fast forward, I get through medical school, I get through residency, and I kind of get back on the things. And now I'm the primary care doctor in my community. I can't do no blogging no more, but I figured myself, hey, you know what? I gotta do something else. So that's when I kind of started what I call the lunch and learns. I would spend Tuesdays and Thursdays doing an hour a discussion on diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, one of these, just some medical thing, but Tuesdays, Thursdays, 2 days a week. And we started on Facebook, and the Facebook crowd was loving it. But they asked me one day, say, hey, Dr. Barry, like, that's cool. I like you doing those videos, but I'm on the road, I'm moving around. I don't really have time to watch a video. Can you like make this into like an audio thing? I ain't know nothing about podcasting at the time, but I said, I'm gonna do it. And I remember I probably took my first like 20 episodes and then boom, dropped it like as a podcast. So that's when the Lunch Learn with Dr. Barry like kind of rise. And it's been, I think we're on episode like 3 something. I honestly, I stopped keeping track of it. We were on like episode 300 and something of these podcast episodes of just kind of weekly educating the community and, kind of getting my name out there at the same time. But it's at the end of the day, because I do it for free. I would do it just because I like doing it. And it's just been a passion of mine of trying to just educate the community and, make information that I know has been difficult, especially for the Black community, to obtain a little bit easier and a little bit palatable for us to kind of digest and understand. So that's how like the social media, Dr. Barry kind of grew. And then I became that father. And that was probably the best time I've ever had in my life. Because at the time, especially in you guys, most healthcare providers, medicine can be very inundated with work. And you can just, you work, and then you go to sleep and then you're back to working again. And it was the first time I actually had something to look forward to outside of my wife, but like something to look forward to going home, to the point where like, all right, guys, like, is the work done here? Because I want to go back and spend some time with my kid. And, we had my oldest daughter, Malia, and that was really kind of that driving force that said, oh, I am not only doing this for the community, but now I have my own family to kind of do this for and, push myself and do what I need to do on all kind of fronts. So it's been really just an amazing ride that continues to get better day by day. And, again, and the fates have somehow led me here. So I'm, like I said, I'm excited.
So Doc, one of the things that we forgot to put in or mention about your bio, a big piece of it is the Autism in Black organization that you are a part of. Correct me if I'm wrong, co-founder of. And so can you talk more about that space being in that Autism in Black space, how that started, where you all are currently, where you all are looking to try to go?
It's interesting. I talk about my daughter. I talk about the reason why, outside of my wife, because, she'll listen to this and kill me. I talk about the reason why I used to get energized coming home, right, with our first daughter. And my wife, she's a therapist. And, I'm the physician at this time. I'm a second or third year resident at the time. Yeah, second or third year resident. So I'm about to be what we call an attending. I mean, you're done residency, you're done medical, you're done training. And my wife starts to notice that, our daughter isn't doing the things at her age that she should be doing, right? She isn't progressing from a developmental standpoint at the rate that she should be progressing. Now, I'm a physician, I'm healthcare, I do, but I'm an internist. I only know them adults. 18 and up, I'm good. 18 and younger, it's a toss up. And I told her it's honest. But she was very determined because all signs in her mind were saying, hey, you know what? Something is wrong. And I think our daughter's autistic. Now, I had my brother had a older son who was autistic. So I was familiar, right? And I hate to say familiar, but I knew of having, autistic children in the family. I knew of it, but now it's at my front doorstep and I don't know what to do. I'm about to be an attending physician. I am absolutely clueless on what to do. Fortunately, and I thank God every day, my wife was saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to steer the ship right now because I know you need some help. I know you need some direction, and I'm going to get us some help. And we thought, and this is what is always trips us out. We thought that, husband, physician, wife in therapy, it's going to be easy to kind of get the answers that we need to get. And we started running into roadblock after roadblock, whether people didn't, believe my wife, who was the therapist. Again, when I say people, doctors, people, my colleagues didn't believe my wife, where people were saying like, oh no, just give it some time, just wait. And then I got to go home and listen to my wife tell me, hey, we can't wait. So imagine what that conversation on the ride home is. My colleague, right? I didn't know him, but another doctor saying, hey, no, you should wait, till she's 3, till she's 4, before you do anything. And then I got to go ride home and say, hey, we not waiting. So I don't care what that pediatrician just said. We not waiting. We'll go find another one. And I'm in this rock and hard place trying to say okay, all right, but the doctor said, and I don't care what the doctor said. And we ran into so many obstacles and I'm telling myself, I'm trying to, I'm stepping outside of myself. I'm saying, all right, if a doctor and a therapist can run into these types of hurdles and obstacles just to get to the point of a diagnosis, to the point where my wife literally had to camp out in this neurologist's office. She literally had to camp out and say, I'm going to keep coming here every day. Mind you, I'm the one dropping her off. I'm going to keep coming here every day until you give us a diagnosis. Because again, for those who may not know, until you get that diagnosis, there's a slew of services that won't start, can't start, not happen. So by, I think it's Thursday afternoon, Friday, neurologist finally broke down, gave us the piece of paper, and then we were on our way. And that is when we took a step back and say, okay, if it was difficult for us, imagine how difficult it is for my brother. Imagine how difficult it is for my cousin. Imagine how difficult it would be for anyone else in our community. And that's when we said, you know what, we got to do something about this. We can't be content that, we have the resources, we have the time to be able to stand up for our rights, knowing that other families aren't. And that's really how Autism in Black was formed. It's funny. I tell the story all the time. Initially, my wife was kind of concerned because, she's like, all right, but if we call it Autism in Black, people are going to look at us funny. People are going to, get upset because we're only focused on the Black community. And I'm like, hey, I don't care about none of that. We are Autism in Black. And they are just going to have to deal with the fact that I'm only talking about the Black community. Now, if you get some benefit, if you're in a different community and you get some benefit from what we're doing, we're not going to block you from it. But we want folks to know that when we come out, when we step out here, it's Autism in Black through and through. And it's been our mission since then to make information easier, to remove obstacles, to put people in positions, because we weren't the first people in the space, but we just happened to be one of the loudest. And we recognize that. There are plenty other people, professionals, therapists who were doing the work here, but it wasn't necessarily as organized, and it wasn't. We're fortunate, right? We had the resources that we can be as loud as we want, and that's really been a driving force to elevate those who are putting the work in this community, because again, it's going to benefit my kids. My wife ended up actually being diagnosed with autism throughout the process. We have a set of twins. My youngest son, medically diagnosed with the autism. So it's been this kind of journey that's been so satisfying because every day is different. But I remember the humble beginnings when people looked at us like, nah, y'all need to wait. That's cool, but we don't think it's happening. We think you're wrong. And fortunately, I had someone who was strong enough to say, I'm not going to listen to none of that.
Yeah,
So,
you brought up a great point.
Real quick,
Yeah,
Trav, I don't mean to cut you off, bro.
You all right?
I didn't forget about the Autism in Black. That was actually one of my questions, and Nick just kind of threw it off. So, because I was trying to give you the big intro. Okay, let me hit him with the question, and he gonna come in. It's all good. I got some other questions, so it's all good, Nick. It's all good. It's all good. I had a great lead in. Okay, let me hit him with the Autism in Black. But it's all good. It's all good. Go ahead, Trav.
No, I love it. We all are prepared and obviously excited. First off, just thank you for sharing that piece. You brought up something that really resonated with me, and that's having a strong, consistent wife. When my son was first diagnosed, it was the denial stage, but she was the main one to say, hey, we have to keep pushing. We have to ensure that we're getting these resources and we have to get these correct answers to ensure that we could really give him the attention that he needs. So my question to you, I've met you and your wife. You guys are really strong minded and, you're very vocal when it comes to this realm of autism. Just for, newer parents to the autism space, what is some advice you could give to keep the relationship strong, especially the marriage in trying times with your autistic children?
So interesting. We had this conversation, actually this past week. I got a new episode coming up, talking about it. But I think first and foremost, we had to start out with the communication. I had to recognize that I didn't know what I needed to know. I kind of referenced it in healthcare. In healthcare, you go to see a doctor, and yeah, you got a 15-minute appointment, but by minute 2, your doctor knows what's going on. Your doctor can give you the game plan in 2 minutes and then have you on your way. Now, you may shoot the breeze for another 8 minutes, but 2 minutes in, your doctor knows what's happening. And now here's a situation where my wife is telling me, hey, this is what's going on. And a lot of my disbelief and the strife was me just not being at the 2-minute mark that she was at. She was what would have took me to 15 minutes, she got in 2. And she was actually kind of upset because I didn't get in 2 as well. And we used to have to have a lot of good conversation, y'all know what I mean. Right? We used to have a lot of good conversation about the fact that, hey, I'm not where you're at right now. So I always tell, especially the new families, you gotta be in lockstep and key from a communication standpoint and say, hey, what stage are you at right now? Where, when you hear, all right, our child has this, what are you thinking? Because a lot of times we will go kind of in our parallel ways and, I'm thinking one thing, my wife is thinking another, but none of us are actually talking to each other to kind of see all right, am I 5 steps ahead, 2 steps ahead? And that's where a lot of the anger amongst each other, that's where a lot of the strife amongst each other tends to hit, because one parent is ready to go. One parent has got to that 2-minute mark and they're ready to give you the game plan and let's keep it moving. And you're just trying to turn the corner. You're just hold on now. I don't even know what's happening right now. So I think having that communication piece to say, all right, where are we at right now? And understanding that it's okay if we are not at the same position. I'm going to eventually get there, but I might need you, again, I'm a pride. I got to put the pride to the side. I'm going to need you to kind of you might have to pull me, right? Normally I do the pushing, but you might have to pull me along until I catch up to you. I think that was a very big thing, especially for our new community, our new couples, when this happens, when anything happens, but especially when this happens, having that communication piece to say where we at and what steps do I need to kind of get to where you're at, I think is huge, because there's going to be a lot of questions that, one parent is not going to be able to kind of understand or even answer until they get to that next level. So I think having the communication and recognizing it's okay that me and you are not at the same stage of this diagnosis is huge.
Dr. Barry, and I'm glad you said that, can you go a little bit deeper into your mindset of when your child was first diagnosed, the feelings that you felt? Because I know everybody's different, right? And speaking for, the fellas on the call, I can't speak how everybody took, the information they received when their child initially first got diagnosed. But for myself, I felt all the emotion. I was upset. I was sad. Part of me was in denial, and denial probably for a good bit of time. So I want you to talk about that a lot more in depth than that, because I think as Black men, it's important to understand how when your child first get that diagnosis, there is a commonality in knowing that we all struggle with it. It wasn't just immediate. Okay, this it. Let's get it going. It's okay, well, now the thoughts and Nick says it's a lot, the dreams and the hopes that we have for this child, it shifts now. It doesn't mean those things can't happen, but now the mindset changes of how we have to approach this. So Could you just dive a little bit more into your emotions when your child got first diagnosed? Like, what was going through your mind?
Let me tell you, I was angry, right? And what was interesting, who I was angry at is a great question, right? At first, I was angry with myself, trying to figure out, all right, was this something did I do something? Like, because you just don't know. All right, did I do something wrong? Like, what happened here? And I'm talking to my wife, did you do something wrong? All of a sudden, you start trying to figure out, like, I'm playing the blame game. And then I'm telling my wife, hey, I told my wife flat out, do not diagnose my kid. Like, get that up out of here. Like, and again, mind you, this is her field, right? This is like her telling me not to diagnose someone with high blood pressure. This is her field. And I'm telling her, don't diagnose my kid. Because I had this level of anger that I just could not, put the pieces together. Because I want to solve something. And right now, you done gave me a puzzle I can't even solve. You gave me a puzzle that I don't even, like, I'm trying to figure out where are the instructions at. So I was angry at first, for sure. And, thankfully, right? She's a very strong-willed lady. She ain't care about none of that. She like, hey, all that rah-rah, that's cool. We going to the doctor, right? Like, we going to the doctor. Like, so I had to, like, suck it up. Cause, like, yes, I'm still angry, but my wife don't really drive like that. I gotta go to the doctor's appointment. So I'm still going to the doctor's appointment. I gotta sit here in the corner in the doctor's office while the pediatrician's saying, I think it's too early. In the back of my mind, I'm like, see, I told you it was too early. And she's telling the pediatrician, no, it ain't. Right? But I got to suck it up because I know who's the head of this captain, who's the captain right now. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, yes, I told you. But she's like, nah, that pediatrician's a dummy. We going to the metal. Right? Like, so I had this level of anger that kind of, that followed me, that carried me, and I missed, and I didn't physically miss some of the steps, but I emotionally missed some of the early steps while we're going to see these professionals, and one professional is telling us it's not the time, or another professional telling us it's too early. I'm emotionally not there for my wife and my kid, obviously, because I'm so angry trying to figure out, like, who to blame, and I didn't know who to blame. And we had our conversation. She got me up to speed. She got me to the 2-minute mark. And now I'm right there with her. I'm like, hey, doc, like, we're going to be here tomorrow too if you don't give this a paper. Right? Like, so now she has a partner in crime. So now she has a partner in crime to be able to lean on, so she doesn't necessarily have to take all of the emotional burden of the roadblocks that we kept on running to. And now I'm looking at my kid, and I talked about Nick with this. I was looking at my kid. I was like, okay, like, I thought this was going to be your life, and now I don't know. And that messed me up probably more than the anger, because now here's dad who, physician, mom's a therapist, and we have no clue what my life is, and what my life, again, I'm being selfish, what my life is going to look like for my daughter, right? Like, now I'm like, her future is in the cloud. My future is in the cloud. So now I'm just kind of this walking confused person, right? Who still got to go to work, right? Like, everything is cool. Who still got to come home. Like, everything is cool. But I don't understand. All right, I'm thinking, all right, my daughter going to live with me forever? Like, is she going to talk? Is she gonna, like, I don't know what is happening. So these are all of these kind of emotions that, I'm kind of like trying to eat to myself, right? You know how we do, right? We want to take in all of the emotions and all of the burden and try to fix it to myself. And me not relying on someone who's been there, this is their field, saying, hey, let me take some of that burden off. Let me answer some of these questions for you. So it took me a while to get to that point where I was no longer angry, where I was no longer afraid, right? Because that's something that's an emotion that we don't typically talk about. I was no longer afraid of what the future held for my wife, for my daughter, and for myself. I was no longer afraid of that no more, because I thought, like, hey, we're putting the work in. It's going to be all right, whatever that future looks like. And I think that has been the biggest hurdle for me. No longer being afraid of what's going to happen and being able to kind of be present in the moment. I think those were some of the biggest hurdles. But I think if I had to choose one emotion, anger for sure was, right off the bat for me.
Lonnie, did you want to add something? Did you have something on your mind?
I was just thinking about, I talked about this in my dissertation work, and there's a recent article I read that talked about how today the rates of autism diagnosis have equalized In some cases, Black and Hispanic folks, kids are being diagnosed at slightly higher rates than white kids, which on the surface is a great thing. But there's still a 3.5 year lag time between when folks of color mention, hey, something's going on with my kid, and actually getting the diagnosis. And so there's risk with seeing that data from the outside. Like, you know what? The rates are equalized, Black and white kids, other kids are getting diagnosed equal rates, but there's still the delay in services, still the delay in diagnosis and whatnot. Can you talk a little bit more about just what you see as some of the biggest challenges that families face? Because like we came into this autism situation thinking we had a leg up. My wife's a physician. I'm a professional graduate student. We thought we'd be able to access services and supports easier. And we just had an absurd amount of difficulty getting services. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, what's interesting, I think, especially when we talk about even being able to acknowledge, hey, something's going on, right? For us, we will, especially from a society standpoint, diagnostic standpoint, there are so many other behavioral traits that get labeled to Black community, especially Black kids, that they won't even give us the benefit of doubt that they're like, oh, they may be autistic too, right? They won't even give us that benefit of doubt until a year or 2 or 3 years. And I just remember just hearing my wife saying, no, early, we got to start early. My daughter's 2. And all the books I'm reading say we got to start at 3. My daughter's like, nope, we're starting at 2. And getting to the point where even when we got the diagnosis, we finally hounded the neurologist to say, all right, here you go, take it. Damn, leave my office. Now I got to start finding the services, right? Because it's one thing to have this piece of paper saying, yes, this is it. But now I got to find the services. Now I got to find to see who's the speech therapist, right, that will take this diagnosis. Because most people may not realize, like, if let's say I break my arm, I can find an occupational therapist with no problem. I can find a physical therapist with no problem. I can find all those therapies, the same therapist, no problem. If I have a diagnosis of autism, all of a sudden that same occupational therapist, oh no, we don't work with that, or it's a cash paid service. Same physical therapist, it's a cash paying service. But like, well, but I got insurance. Yeah, your insurance don't cover that typical diagnosis. So you get to the point where now I got the diagnosis early, right? I got it. Like, I have the resources, I have good insurance, but now trying to find the one speech therapist, occupational therapist who's willing to actually work with us, right, and use our insurance, that's a roadblock. So now I'm paying in cash, right? Because I'm gonna do what I gotta do for my kid. Now I gotta pay in cash, and that's what it hit us even harder. I know for a fact there's a lot of families who can't just out here pay $80 a session, $90 a session, 2-3 times a week, and then try to decide what they're gonna feed dinner. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Like I live in reality. I got friends and family members who I know for a fact could not do what we're doing here. So you run into this boat where even if you get the diagnosis, because it takes so long for people, let's say a couple, let's say the father, let's say the mother, let's say it's mom, let's say it's dad, let's say grandma, or like some families, like, because families will try to fight that off you too, and so like, nah, like, don't worry about that. You was just like that when you were little, trying to delay. That when you do get some resources that are now available, trying to find access to those resources, either from a financial standpoint or just physically, like, I can't find someone there, becomes such a significant roadblock over and over again. And I think, like, because I'm in South Florida, so I'm in Palm Beach County, you throw a rock, you're going to hit a rehab center or whatnot. But we ended up having to drive almost 30-40 minutes for one speech therapist over here, and then another 30 minutes in a different direction for an occupational therapist. It was such a burden to just get treatment of care, even with a diagnosis.
So Dr. Barry is becoming one of my most favorite doctors out there. Question. So how do, as an internist and as a parent of a child on the spectrum, and now as a husband whose wife is diagnosed. Okay. Have you seen any connections in your profession between like what you've seen as a doctor, as an internist, and autism as relates to like your child or your spouse or anybody else? Like, have you seen any interconnections between your job as an internist and, health when it comes to autism?
That's a very good question. I think especially as an internist, I'm getting the adults. I'm getting 17, 18 and up. And what I do, because like now when I'm around my colleagues, right, because, my other doctor friends, my nurses, and I'm just noticing just certain behavioral traits that I see with my daughter and my wife. I'm just like, I wonder, right? Like I start asking myself like, oh, I wonder if you're, but I keep it to myself. Because because I'm seeing like very similar like behavioral traits, the social traits, like standoffish or not responding appropriately, and again within my field. And I think what happens as an internist, as an adult physician, we're so ingrained, and I attribute this to our training. We're so ingrained to only either looking at numbers like, all right, what's your blood sugar, what's your blood pressure, what's the cholesterol looking like, that we don't put a focus on just the general behavior. Like, all right, what is from a behavioral standpoint? Am I seeing something different that I should be recognizing? And I say all the time, like, because I live with it every single day, it now gives me a different lens as an adult physician to recognize, okay, is there some behavioral traits that are maybe attributing to the fact that, you're not compliant with your blood pressure medication, right? You're not losing the weight you need to lose. Like, is there some behavioral traits that may be adding to this fact that now I can add it to my arsenal of questioning? Whereas before, it's like, all right, are you high salt diet, low salt diet? Are you getting your carbs in? Like, okay, like what happens when your blood pressure is high? What happens when you run into some stress? So now I'm asking different questions to try to add to my armamentarium, because I'll be honest, right? Our field in health doesn't address that. Like they don't look at that. That's not a thing for them. They're very numbers and data driven. So I do love that more of us are now being diagnosed. But like Lonnie said, the fact that, we're getting diagnosed later, and we already know with time, like if I get diagnosed later, that means I might have missed a year or two of, of developmental, tools that I could have learned that it could have got me up to pace, but now I'm behind the rest of my class. And so now I'm having to attribute, all right, is the adults I'm seeing, was there some hiccups? Was there a delay? Was there something that wasn't seen when they were younger that now I have to deal with as an adult? And I'm seeing that more and more just in my general practice, where there's just behavioral trends and compliance trends are affecting the other data points that we typically look at when we focus on some of the numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Lonnie.
I was just going to say, there's very limited research on autistic adults. We know the transition services from high school to adulthood are poor planning, but we also know that with the limited research we have, there are really poor health outcomes for autistic adults, and then even poorer outcomes and poor employment outcomes for Black folk with autism. So can you talk a little bit about that and just sort of what do you think are some of the things that might be important next steps for us to think about as far as supporting our kids? Because my kid is going to 6th grade now, so I'm like, I know I need to start now thinking about transition, thinking about what can he do, what is he interested in, and his level of independence. I don't know what his level of independence is going to be, but if he stays on the same trajectory, he can be independent. You see what I'm saying? But there's nothing for me to dig into. There's no support right now for that.
What I think is difficult, especially when we talk about kind of transition periods, is you have the elementary, the middle, the high, and after I get to high school, what happens? So now we have to look at it like kind of zoom out. Like, all right, why is it that services stop like after 18 or 20? Like, why? Like, what is it about this arbitrary age that all of a sudden you don't think, especially from a government, from a a disability, like people who will pay? Like, why is it that you think that at this age like everything is gold. Because one, it assumes that like we caught you when you were 2 years old, right? It assumes that we've had a good, let's see, like 19, let's say 18 to 19 years of work. So by the time you're 18, by the time you're 21, you are good to prosper in the world. But we know that a lot of us not getting caught at 2 years old. So a lot of us are missing 5 to 7 years on average of, developmental tools that now we kind of have to unfortunately learn on the fly to get squeezed in together while we're also learning to just kind of grow up and be an adult. And we see this, especially in like you talk about this like high school. Like if you look at the college campuses, we were speaking to one college campus the other day, and we just asked them like, "Hey, how many autistic children? Like, how many autistic children that you got on campus right now?" And they were like, "Oh, I think like 20." And mind you, this is a huge school. And I'm like, "Y'all only got 20, right?" Like, so now my immediate question is, "Oh, what are y'all doing to increase that?" "Oh, we don't have the funding and the service to try to increase." So it becomes this catch-22 of how can I prepare and transition our future adults to become adults if I cut off the services, I cut off the finances, and I tell the parents and the adults, hey, it's up to you. So it becomes this kind of multi position fight that we have to do, right? We have to fight with the schools, right? Say, hey, you know what? Like, they're about to go into 6th grade. Like, are you doing the things to prepare them to get into 6th grade? Oh, they're about to go into high school. Are you doing the things to prepare them to go to high school? Hey, they're about to graduate. Like, did you get some internships? Like, so now we got to fight with the schools. We have to fight with knowing that there's this clock out here that says by the time they're and I want to say it's 21, but it may be 18. Like it may just be state dependent on when services kind of cut off from a disability standpoint. So we're having all of these different factors here, and then we're expecting our parents to just know how to do this. Like we're expecting the parents to just know, even the information is nowhere to be found unless you're like digging and searching. And even if you're the type who can dig and search, you don't know exactly what to dig and search at. So it definitely becomes this unfortunate multi-pronged approach that you have to, I don't want to say attack, but you do have to hit on all fronts if you want to try to have a successful transition, because it's not going to be just from the schooling standpoint. It's going to be, you mentioned it, from the job standpoint. It's from a residential standpoint, like if they want to go live by themselves, all of these different things that you have to like fight and make sure, your kid is going to be prepared for when they get out there, especially if you not happen to be there.
The interesting thing you said about that school, Dr. Barry, you said that they said they have about 20, and that's only the ones that have identified themselves as being autistic. There's probably way more than that, right? But kind of going back to the father aspect, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to fathers when it comes to support system? And the reason I bring this up is because, you mentioned that when your daughter was first diagnosed, you were angry. I went through all the emotion, everybody on this call went through all the emotion, and we eventually, found the supports. But I could say it took me quite some time to find the support. Like I had my wife, but like everybody on this call, with your wife, you trying to figure it out, and you're not agreeing on the same things, right? And so you want to get with like-minded people that you can have these conversations with, that can give you advice, that can tell you, if you're wrong, or say, hey, this worked for my kid. Maybe, it may work for yours. You want to build a type of community and brotherhood. What advice would you give to those fathers once they've, kind of dived in and say, okay, my child has been diagnosed. This is what it is. Now I got to start putting in the work. From a mental health perspective, what type of advice of supports would you say that, especially Black fathers need to seek out?
I think first and foremost, we have to be okay with the seeking of advice, because a lot of times we'll have this preconceived notion that we're the only ones dealing with the problem. Like I'm the only one who's angry. I'm the only one who's sad. I'm the only one who's confused. So we start internalizing it and saying, all right, since I'm the only one dealing with this, I'm going to be the only one who's going to help me solve it. And then we tell ourselves, because I'm the only one, there's no one out here who's looking for support, or who's looking to support me. So now we tell ourselves that not only am I the only one dealing with it, even if I started looking, I know I'm not going to find no one out there. There's no groups out there who like talking, who have gone through the same things I've gone through. So there's some preconceived conceptions that we have to break to be able to kind of move forward. We have to be able to say like, okay, there's like almost you have to ask yourself, all right, I can't be the only one who's gone through this. I can't be the only one who's feeling angry. I can't be the only one who feels sad about what's going on. Right? I can't be the only one who's walking around confused. There's got to be some support group out there. Like you have to start telling yourself that and asking different questions instead of like, oh, no one is out there. You say, no, there's got to be someone, and be very purposeful in looking. Because I've had, obviously, especially with the platform that we have, I've had fathers come to me, and it's so funny because it's always in this kind of like side. It literally is like a lot of times it'd be side by side convo. It'd be like, oh, hey, doc, you still doing autism in black? Yeah, of course. What's going on? Yeah, my son. And once I know that, I'm like, okay, all right, I see what's happening here, right? So, but like, I know I can't be too aggressive because I know this probably took a lot for you to even come up to me. I know this probably took like, you know what? I see Barry over there. I see him at work every single day. I'm finally gonna say something to him. So I know it. So I know I have to extend the olive branch to say, hey, yeah, no, you're right. Like, definitely talk to your wife, and if you need any help, you know how to, like, so I have to be able to extend that olive branch out there because I know that there are so many mental obstacles that they had to fight before they said, all right, I need some help. And let's be honest, like, again, I'm in Autism in Black, right? I didn't even know about y'all fellas, right? And I remember talking to my wife, and my wife was like, oh, you know what? We should do Black Fathers panel. And I'm like, you know what? I think that would work, but like, I don't know if we can get enough Black fathers on there. I remember telling her that. I don't know if we can get enough Black fathers on the panel. Because, and for those who don't know, I do the ads for her as well too. So when I do the ads for our conference and stuff like that, I literally don't show ads to men. Like, so imagine, I do not show a single ad to men. All of the ads, thanks to Facebook, is only geared to the women because I know if there's a father out there, the wife, the mom's gonna be like, hey, did you see this conference? Did you hear about this? Like, so I know eventually they'll bring them along. And after our panel, I'm like, oh, you know what? I gotta stop playing games here because like I told myself there aren't enough fathers out here doing this, and here go these brothers right here. They got a whole podcast support group. What am I doing? So even me, Autism in Black co-founder, I still had some mental roadblocks that I had to go over. And I had to ask myself different questions instead of saying like, nah, there's no one there. It's like, all right, I know there's someone out here. Where are they at? And I think that's the big thing for our Black fathers. Like, we have to ask ourselves, no, I know there's the support out here. I know I don't feel any less if I need help, if I ask for help. Where can I go get this at so I can feel a little bit better about myself?
Yeah. One big thing I'm hearing is community, expand it. Obviously you have a great organization, but we still have a lot of work to do, and we're trying to do our part with our group and trying to make sure we're getting as many episodes and bringing on great guests like yourself. Even though you have an organization, I know there are constant conversations of things that could be done better, not just within a state, but just nationwide. What are some things that you suggest just to anybody watching that maybe could spark some more interest or ideas?
One thing we found is that the need for the conversation, people are hungry for it. Like, people were hungry for that panel. People were like, oh my God, if these guys could just talk twice a year, I would love it. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad. Like that, like we are so, like, the bar is so low for us. If that they hear from Black fathers talking twice a year, they'll be satisfied. I said, okay, now we got to do better. Right. So having to raise the bar and say, okay, like, we are not only going to be out there, we are going to purposefully be out there because the people want to hear from us. The people feel like we're aliens, especially not talking to fathers, right? They feel like we're aliens when they hear from us. And a lot of times that just comes from our demeanor. It usually comes from our position within the family where we just kind of sit back. We make sure things are happening, but we're okay kind of sitting back because a lot of, especially in the autism community, a lot of it is women, female driven, right? And again, I tell you, I literally just show ads to women because I know they're going to bring y'all one way or the other. So it's one of those things where, like, now we have to ask ourselves, like, all right, why is it female driven? Is it female driven because we're not trying to get more men out, or is the men really like in the background and prefer to be in the background? The majority of the men I talk to, they just as talkative as Nick, right? Like, nah, they get to moving. So if you give them the opportunity, you give them the platform, they will let you know how they're feeling. But the problem is that we have this mindset that there's not enough platforms, or the platform's too small, or no one wants to hear from us. And I think that is the steps that we have to take. We have to say, you know what? I'm going to be diligent in reaching out and saying, you know what? I only want the fathers. Like, I need y'all to step up. I know y'all are out there. Come on out. Like, don't be scared. Like, the amount of people I've shared y'all podcast to in the past month, right? That I was like, hey, did you know? Because I happen to know a lot of fathers. I'm like, hey, did you know about this? Did you know about this? And I just kind of wait, because, I got to do my wait thing. I'm like, hey, did you know about this? Just so they can hear it, because I know I can't go full, commando on them. I can't attack them, right? But I got to give them an opportunity to let them know, like, hey, there are other people who look like you, who are going through your same experiences, and you will feel welcome. And that's the thing, like, you will feel welcome when you come out, right? Like no father's going to come out and be like, man, I'll be honest, y'all, I was angry. And none of us are going to be like, oh, you was angry? Kind of wild, fam. You kind of like we're not going to do that, right? Because in the back of our mind, again, I remember when I was on that panel, in the back of my mind, I'm like, these boys done stole my story. These boys has been in my house. What do you mean? Like, how did they experience the same stuff that I experienced as well? So I think that is so going to be so key moving forward, is those who have the platforms, like, being diligent and saying, nah, I'm going to talk to the men. I'm going to talk to the fathers. I know they're out there, and I know they want to speak, and not taking our preconceived notions about them and allowing it for us not to do anything.
Piggybacking off of that, Doc, in the Black autism space, I know we just talked about the fatherhood. I know that it's, like you mentioned, it's female centered, right now. There's a lot of ladies in there, and that's wonderful. My question, though, is what else is the Black autism space missing? Like, what else should the Black autism space have that maybe other autism spaces have, but, something else that can help grow individuals' comfort and knowing that they're, either have a loved one on the spectrum or are on the spectrum themselves, to grow in fathers' comfort with dealing with their families and family members that may or may not be on the spectrum, or the whole neurodivergent community as a whole. But specifically speaking to this community, this Black autistic community, what else should we have? What are we missing? Where do we go from here?
I think, it's so funny because, like I said, we be having these conversations. I think one of the things where if you had to list, right, and I'll just speak about just general. If you just had to list, like, all right, if I'm thinking about the Black autism space, who are the Mount Rush? Like, who's the Mount Rushmore? Like, who are the 4 or 5 people that I could be like, oh yeah, you, and you. When I see you, I see Black autism, right? We don't have that. We're very, and again, because we're small in voice, not necessarily small in numbers. We're just small in voice, and we're still kind of fragmented in, like, our approach of what we want to do. So we don't have enough central figures to be like, okay, this is the person I should model after. Oh, when they step in the room, I know that they're going to represent me in the Black autistic space. We don't have enough of that. And then I talk about this approach of, all right, which front do we want to fight, right? Are we going to fight in the schools? Are we going to fight in our local school districts from a governmental standpoint? Are we going to fight to change some rules that, like, eventually will trickle down to us? Are we going to get the funding? Lonnie talked about the fact that there's not enough research. Why is there not enough research? Because typically people who look like us aren't the heads, or aren't leading, or aren't having those leading questions to try to figure out, hey, how many Black autistic adults are out there? How many Black, like, where are the men? right? Like they're not asking these questions. So it becomes this approach. And again, and this is why when it happens. Now, first of all, the issues I'm bringing up happen in every field. When I talk about healthcare, there's not enough black men. There's not enough black men who are in the schools. There's not enough black men who are doing politics. They're not so we're a fragmented bunch because we happen to be small. But specifically in the autism space, and mind you, when we talk about autism space, it gets put under this cloud or kind of umbrella of kind of disability. And we just happen, like autism happens to be one rung of the disability. Now, there are other rungs of disability that get a lot more eyes, get a lot more funding, right? So there's attention over there, and we know where attention goes, money flows, right? So you have all of these issues where now I want to focus on the autism space, a little bit of a smaller rung. I want to focus on the black autism space, an even smaller rung within that small rung, and that's where we have to work. Like we have to work where we have to say, you know what? Like I'm going to be one of the Mount Rushmores. I'm going to be, when you see me walking around, all right, yep, that's black autism. Like they're fighting for me, and they're fighting for me to make sure the schools are acting right. They're fighting for me to make sure the university is acting right. They're fighting for me to make sure the state of Florida is acting right. Like we have to have like those really big conversations, and we have to do it like in a sense from a community standpoint, because not everyone may have the same intentions. Not everyone may have kind of the same goals, but we have to kind of get there. So I think if you had let's say if we had like a State of the Union for the black autistics, we would be fighting, right? Because one person may be extremely passionate about one thing, and then you have another group extremely passionate about another, and unfortunately we don't come together where it needs to happen. And I think Lonnie, and especially because in medicine we deal with this a lot. Research numbers dictate where your money going to go. So the reason why you don't have the money going where you're going, because you don't even have the research, and you don't have the research because you don't have those who are in the power position to say, hey, we need to do research on this right here to try to get some answers.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lonnie.
I'm just going to think, we talk a lot about some of the challenges or obstacles we deal with and face, but I want you to talk to us a little bit about some joy or some successes you've been having with your family and the kids. And because I spent a long time focused on what my son couldn't do, and it was a completely different story when I focused on what he could do. And so we've had it's just been so much fun seeing him. And so when he has success, he lights up, he pokes his chest out, and so it's fun seeing him shine. So can you tell us a little bit about some joy with your kids and your family?
My oldest daughter, Malia, I think she just became an orange belt. Yeah, she's an orange belt now, right? So oldest daughter, Malia, all of a sudden one day says, I want to do karate. Huh? like what you want? What are you watching that would make you even want to do karate? So of course I'm like, I'm the super dad. I'm gonna take you to karate. I'm gonna just sit back to see if you actually enjoy it. And seeing that, she actually enjoyed it, was actually fighting, was actually following directions. And my daughter, she's the type, she's not gonna necessarily you won't outwardly know she's paying attention. She's just kind of there, might look at you, might look down, may look at you, may look down. So I don't even know if she's really following what the sensei is telling her until it's go time. And then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, okay, you got this. And we get to the point where it's time to move up on belt. I'm like, hey, Malia, if you just practice, you could probably move on the belt. And they gave you this list of things you have to do. And I'm trying to walk her through it to see, let me see how much she knows. She run through the list too. I'm like, oh, I said, you've been playing. She's like, yeah, I practice at home. So seeing her have these kind of small wins and moving up in belts and being excited about sparring. Again, like I said, when she was young, I didn't know what this girl was gonna do. I was clueless. I said, it's gray skies. I don't know what's about to happen here. And now I got a person who liked karate. And now that she liked karate, and then all of a sudden, because she actually just got into 6th grade, going to 7th grade this year, she wants to learn how to cook now. I'm like, my daughter, she's funny because she don't like to eat. I don't know if y'all kids, my daughter is extremely picky on what she'll eat, but she got no problem cooking all kinds of dishes at the school that she don't even taste them. I'm like, Malia, did you taste it? No. I'm like, Well, how you gonna know it's good or not? Like, so it's just one of those things where seeing them have personal joy, seeing my daughter have some personal joy in the things that she's doing, it is so heartwarming for me because I'm like, all right, like she wants to be, a Friday cook. All right, cool. Like whatever you want to do, I'm gonna do it for you. And I think that's what's such a blessing for me. And then she does well in school, and I'm like, because again, I didn't know she was gonna do well in school because she was aphasia, so she wasn't speaking for about 2 years or so. Like, and her speaking made one word here, one there, but like she would kind of mouth or kind of point. So I didn't even know, she'd be even speaking, but now she like talks a storm. So it's all of these little small wins that I just keep seeing happening over and over again that just continue to stack up that bring me so much joy and, just lets us know like, okay, like we were right to, storm that neurologist's office years ago and say, hey, we're not leaving. We were right, to tell that pediatrician, nah, we don't care what you say. We're going to go get a second opinion. And I think that's what's been so heartwarming for me, that like you get to see like, okay, the fact that we did start early. And again, and then you ask yourself like, all right, like if we didn't do that, if we weren't going hard when we needed to go hard, is she like this right now? And fortunately, we don't have to get that answer, right? Because we were, persistent and we were really diligent in what we do. And that's kind of the emotion that we want to give to other families. We want to give them that empowerment to say like, I'm so glad, that I tore up in that IEP meeting. I'm so glad that I told them like, no, I'm not taking what you're telling me now, because I want them to be able to look in 2 and 3 years and say, all right, yeah, see what my kid doing now? Like they wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't, tear that teacher apart.
What I want to start doing is I want to start walking in with theme music to my IEP meetings because it's always a battle every time.
Stone Boston style.
Yeah, they need to come in with some type of theme music.
It's so funny because we talk about this all the time. Like in our IEP meetings, we're not autism and black, right? We're just Maria Davis Pierre, Pierre. We even got like a lawyer. Like she's kind of our, like we're just there. So I know that the school boards be like this, these committees, and be like, all right, they are turning up. Like I didn't even realize that they would turn up this way, because I don't even know if they probably know now, but like I don't know if they were prepared for how prepared we are. And I think that, and obviously that's disheartening, right? Because we know so many families across the country, right, are walking to these IEP meetings unprepared, and the people on the other side are actually banking on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's so. The crazy part is that in the beginning, when my son was at a school before he's at the school he's at now, and like you said, we used to come in there and literally know more than the special education person, everybody. We knew more than everybody, and that was a red flag. Like, okay, we gotta get him out of here, because we should not know more than you guys. This is you guys' profession, and we're the parents, and the fact that we do know more. We got to get you up out of here, son. And so where he's at now, he's in a wonderful situation. Our IEP meetings are wonderful. I can't speak for everybody else on this call because, we got some gladiators on here that go in with the hammers and ready to throw down. So we won't say his name, but we know who he is.
Just look at who laughing the hardest.
You're right. We know who he is. He ready for war every time, every week. IEP.
It's
we got to go
it's
in
me.
there.
It's me.
We're gonna start to wrap it up, but I wanted to kind of end on this question, Dr. Barry, because you and your wife have built an organization, all the content and things that you guys have out there, the conferences that you guys put on. You guys saw an issue in the community and you did something about it. Can you just speak to the Black community and give some type of inspiration for individuals that see issues in the community but feel that they're not good enough or smart enough or whatever their reason it is to step up and try to start their own, whether it's a foundation, whether an organization, whether they want to do research, whatever it is? Can you just give some inspiration? Because speaking for AutisHim, I literally called the brothers and said, hey, I want to start this thing, and they was like, let's do it. It wasn't even a second thought. It was like, if there's something positive we can put out in the community and we can speak to people, because there's so many fathers and, not just fathers, but just families in general of color that can relate, let's just do it. And I feel like just doing it is the biggest hurdle, right? Because you have all these ideas and thoughts and you're like, man, I really want to do it, but something always holds you back. And I come to find that if you just put yourself out there and you just do it, that 9 times out of 10, you'll see, success, whatever your level of success is, right? So can you just give some inspiration to the Black community and say, hey, this is what you need to do.
I think what's interesting, what tends to happen is we have this aspect of kind of this action paralysis, right? That we will analyze. We will know, hey, all right, this is a problem. Look at all of the issues. Look at all the hurdles. But we won't take the first step of action because we're already thinking about Z. Like, we won't even go from A to B because we're like, all right, man, there's no way I can get to a point where I'm sitting in front of Congress, right? Like, that's what we start telling ourselves, right? There's no way I'm gonna sit in front of the school board meeting. There's no, because we start thinking like, oh, now because that destination is so far away, we won't even take the action steps. And what I've found over and over again, those who take the small actions, whether it be a person that says, you know what, I want to be better at my IEP meetings. Okay, all right, what book do I need to read? All right, and they got a book, right? Like, oh, you know what, my child just got diagnosed with autism. Book. Let me go read this book over here. Like I just need to take some small steps because I know it's going to put me further along than a majority of people. Because we run into this aspect of thinking that everyone else is working, everyone else is taking action, and my action isn't going to be big enough to make, any type of change. And because of, again, that same mindset of talking ourselves out of making a change, no one ends up doing nothing, right? Because we came out, there's people who are, there's people who doing talks, there are people who are in the autism space before us, right? But like, we were just so determined that like, hey, like, the buck is not going to stop here with Malia Pierre, right? Because there's a lot of other Malia Pierres who are suffering, and we can't get to them. Like, I can't be at every single IEP meeting, but if I get this person here who likes talking about IEP and then throw them on a podcast, guess what? Now you can get some tips on IEP meetings. So we start telling ourselves, like, there are small things we need to be able to do, right? And whether it's, again, focusing on just your school, right? Just focusing on just your class, focusing on just your school board, just your committee, just these things here that will put you in such a prime position. And guess what happens when you make that first and second step? You start seeing other people who are making first and second steps. And then you say, oh, hey, you know what? Like, hey, Lonnie, I see you doing it. Like, can I sit with you? Can I talk with you? Is there any way we can kind of collab together? And because we love to work, we will work together, but we don't want to work alone, right? So once we see that, like, you also doing work with us, hey, we're gonna bring you along. So I think for my parents out here who understand, like, all right, so this ain't going right, and I can't be content with what's going on. Taking that first, second step will be such a significant factor because you are going to find other people who have just taken the first step, and maybe they don't know the next step, but like, if you're walking together, they'll kind of walk with you. And I think collaboration is just like, that's, again, we're on year 5 of the conference, and still we get people who are like, oh my God, I never heard of Autism Black, and we love that, right? Because one, right, that if we were getting cocky, right, and telling ourselves that, like, oh my God, we're on this Mount Rushmore, we're not on Mount Rushmore yet. This person has never heard of Autism in Black. We ain't doing enough work. We got to go back to work, right? So that's how we be like approaching it, right? And again, like I said, when I heard about y'all, when y'all got on the podcast and when y'all got on the panel, and I'm like, look at that, I can tell I ain't working. Like, clearly I'm not working hard enough. These boys got a podcast. These boys got a support group. What am I doing, Barry? Like, what? That's how I talk to myself. And I think that's how us as a community, as parents, need to do. We need to just take that first and second step, because there are so many other parents out there who are waiting for you to take that first and second step with you. They're waiting. Like, they can't wait for you to take that first, second step to kind of follow your lead.
Man, great episode, Dr. Barry. We thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Really, really appreciate it. Where can the people find your information and content?
So, obviously, let me make sure because she'll kill me if I don't plug it, right? AutismandBlack.org, right? Make sure, you keep up with the organization. She has her own podcast. We're actually coming up with a girls summit in October, boys summit coming up in 2025. I would definitely be back to plug that in for sure. Conference, every single year, but definitely autismandblack.org is a thing. And for some reason, you just want to hear me talk, drbarrypierre.com. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I'm talking everywhere. Y'all can see if they put a mic in front of me, I can just go, right? Like it's very easy for me to do so. So I always got to look at the time. So, you know what, Barry, you're rambling, right? Normally my wife would be in the corner like, hey, speed that up. Like, you're talking too much. So drbarrypierre.com if you want to follow me. Again, we have the podcast, Let's Learn with Dr. Barry, autismandblack.org for the organization. A lot of amazing things we're doing over there. And she has a podcast as well, same title, autismandblack.org.
All right, and for the people, we'll make sure we'll put those links in the bottom of the episode so you can follow Dr. Barry and his wife on their platforms. Dr. Barry, again, thank you so much for your time and effort. This is AutisHim, Black Fathers and Autism, and we out.